Hello, and welcome to this Lumen Art Talk, diving into immersive art. I'm Carla Rapoport, Executive Director of Lumen Art Projects, a UK-based nonprofit which produces and curates exhibitions, commissions, and events using art that intersects with science and technology. Our network of more than 400 artists globally is drawn from our annual juried competition, the Lumen Prize for Art and Technology. Launched in 2012, every year artists who are longlisted, shortlisted, or who win an award are eligible immediately for opportunities that Lumen Art Projects develops with its partners worldwide. I'm really happy to say that one of those partners is CADAF Online. In addition to hosting a number of these panels, we've also provided the art fair with a Lumen video reel, and we've curated our own booth. I hope you'll drop in, take a moment to drop in. This isn't the art fair we were planning, but we all feel that this format has legs and can help us going forward to make the contemporary art world more sustainable, more inclusive, and more appealing, perhaps, to new audiences. It's my honor today to be moderating a panel consisting of two more of our partners and one of our artists on their experiences in installing and running an immersive, interactive art experience called Microworld. Even before COVID-19, one of our speakers had the opportunity to install this work without the assistance of either Lumen physically or the artist physically. No travel was involved. She'll be talking about how they use Skype and email to do this whole project remote. The second gallery owner had the fun of using Microworld to engage the community that she lives in, drawing on the artist's skills to train locals and herself on how to run the show. I'll be introducing each of our speakers, who will give a brief introduction of their Microworld experience, and then we'll throw it open to a panel discussion on lessons learned and why staging an interactive, immersive art experience might not be what you think. So first, I'd like to introduce Nicola Schauerman.
Hi, Nicola. Carla and CADAF. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Nicola, I was going to just say who you were first.
Okay.
Nicola is one half of the award-winning digital art duo Genetic Moo. Based in Margate, UK, Genetic Moo creates playful, interactive art using open source software and sensors. The work draws widely from science, particularly in the areas of evolution, mutation, and artificial life. For the last 7 years, she and her partner have been developing and exhibiting Microworld, a digital art environment populated with interactive creatures created by artists and visitors. Microworld is an experiment in creating a digital ecosystem of artworks that react to each other, to the space they're in, and to the audience. Genetic Moo has shown extensively around the world, both with Lumen and on its own, including venues in the UK, Singapore, China, London, Hong Kong, Margate, and Saudi Arabia. In 2013, I'm pleased to say they won the Lumen Prize Founder Award, and we've been working with them ever since. So over to Nicola.
Hi, Carla and CADAF, and thanks for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm delighted to be part of CADAF Online. So as Carla mentioned, I'm one half of an art duo called Genetic Moo. I've been collaborating with artist Tim Pickup for the last 10 years, and we're inspired by biology and artificial life. And this little thing wiggling over my shoulder is an amoeba, for example. And in fact, we call all our artworks creatures because of this. We use photography, video, and code to create our creatures. And then we use sensors like webcams and microphones and Kinect sensors to bring them to life. A few years ago, we watched a series on TV about ecosystems and the different roles that animals, plants, and the environment play, and how everything is connected. And it was called Microworld, and it inspired us, and it got us to think about how we could bring all our creatures together to create a digital ecosystem home for our creatures and an immersive environment for our audience. We're not the only creature makers in our Microworld. In the past, we've invited contributions from other artists and makers. But more recently, we've opened it up for the audience to get involved in creature making as well. So we've created artworks that allow the audience to introduce in many of the exhibitions so that we can open people up to the wonders of creative coding and then also integrate the work that's created into the exhibition. And in a minute, I'm going to be showing you a video of a Microworld, but also slides from two of the shows that the curators are here to talk about as well. Now we've got Heidi from the Eckhart Gallery and also Punch from Theatre Brecon to talk about their experiences of the Microworld, and obviously we'll join in as well. But I think that gives a nice flavour of how the shows were quite different.
No, it really was. I mean, you could see incredible variety there. So thank you for sharing your screen and for sharing those images. So it's my pleasure now to move on to Heidi. Heidi Leitzke is Assistant Professor of Art and Director of the Eckhart Art Gallery at Millersville University of Pennsylvania. Heidi earned an MFA from Western Carolina University and is a practicing visual artist. She taught at the Chautauqua Institute School of Art Drexel University and Pennsylvania School of Art and Design, where she was gallery director for over 8 years. For 2 years, she served as public art manager for the city of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and remains actively involved in promoting high-quality art projects for the local community as a founder member of the Lancaster Art Family. So over to you, Heidi.
Thank you, Carla. I'm so pleased to participate in this panel today, and I was thrilled to be able to host the Microworld at Eckert Gallery. As you mentioned, I am a professor and the director of the art gallery at Millersville. And part of that role is to be the curator, and I curate 4 exhibitions a year. And with that work, I'm committed to providing diverse, dynamic, and meaningful art experiences for both our university students and the broader regional community. The gallery, the Eckert Art Gallery, is housed within the Winter Visual and Performing Arts Center on the campus of Millersville University, which is a public institution, and we serve about nearly 8,000 undergraduate and graduate students. Located in Southeast Pennsylvania, it's about an hour-and-a-half west of Philadelphia. And we draw from that kind of this regional student body base. We have a lot of first-generation college students, and we have a pretty active community around the university of families and artists and people who are interested in supporting the arts. So one of my goals over the past few years has been to collaborate with academic departments across the campus from a variety of academic disciplines. So my hope with this is to help students and faculty in all fields of study kind of start to discover and appreciate these points of connection between their field of study and art. So I came upon the work of Lumen and Genetic Moo as I was researching artists that explore science and technology, because I was trying to collaborate with the College of Science and Technology. So when I learned about Microworld, I thought it would be a perfect fit for our gallery, and it was. Our Microworld was composed of 4 interactive pieces. We had animats, Hector and the Sun Stars, Multiple, and Aeroplankton, and kind of together they filled our 1,000-square-foot gallery and became this immersive environment. One of the things I think that distinguishes our project from some of the others that I've seen is that it seems like most of the Microworlds last about a week, and the artists come and install and are there to host. Ours was longer than that. We opened on January 23rd and we closed on March 6th. And we had open hours throughout the week, and the artists didn't come to install, but rather we worked through that process remotely. And it was a great learning experience and resulted in this project that was just very kind of inspiring for the students and also compelling for the community. So I can talk more about kind of that process in the panel when we're talking about through some of the questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Heidi. That's a good introduction. So now we come to our 3rd speaker, Punch Mon. Punch has spent 20 years in tourism and arts in and around the rural town of Brecon, Wales, which is also where Lumen is based. In 2017, Punch became visual arts coordinator at the Andrew Lamont Gallery of the Theatre Britannia in Brecon. And she hosted, in the next 2.5 years, she hosted 21 varied exhibitions of all sorts in that gallery, including Microworld. Last year in July, she and her husband opened a beautiful new contemporary art gallery in the town center of Brecon called Found. And since it was launched, she's hosted a further 7 exhibitions of all, showcasing an eclectic range of contemporary artists and makers from both Wales and abroad. So Punch, over to you to talk a bit about your experience with Microworld.
Thanks very much, and thank you again, as everyone has said, to inviting me to be part of this panel. And I suppose my experience was slightly different about how it came about. I met Carla as she was one of 3 other people that was on a panel that I was working with to decide what sort of exhibitions I might put on in the Andrew Lamont Gallery, the theatre. As I started my role, I was very new. I was a complete novice to that role, and she, as one of my panelists, said, well, I think you need a digital exhibition. And I was at that point fairly wide-eyed at the thought. As at home, I can barely turn on my television with the remote. It's complicated for me. So I was just like, okay. Anyway, she's persistent and I'm a yes person. And 6 months later, Microworld happened. And just to say, our community, the whole town of Brecon, children and adults, only amounts to 10,000 people compared to the student community in America. So we were responding to a rural and very different type of audience, and certainly in Wales, much more, expectations are much more of a traditional exhibition, so something digital that didn't involve picture hooks was always going to potentially to be a challenge. Anyway, I was very lucky. Genetic Moo, both of them, they came and actually helped with the install and were with us for a week and helped really introduce the show to the community in that they hosted workshops which were for children but also adults. And by the community, the people of the community adding to the exhibition, so at the workshops, the pieces that they created became part of the bigger show. It meant that they felt that they had ownership, because people in Wales are also very shy and so might not have come, but we had a sort of base of people that wanted to show their friends and families what this thing was that they had begun to contribute to. And also we had a live feed out onto the canal basin that was projected onto the wall, to which Nicola and her partner had added things, a bit scary things, but anyway, so it made people stand, oh, that's the canal, and oh my goodness me, what's this thing coming in? A centipede crawling across the canal boat. So it sort of helped the local people to feel that it was their thing. Anyway, they were with us for a week and that was fantastic. And the other thing in my role is galleries on the second floor. It's part of a wider offering. It has an auditorium and other things. And the gallery on the whole had been something that the other theatre staff perhaps didn't take ownership of, shall we say. But I needed their help with the setup, and then with it's not a manned space on a day-to-day basis. So I needed to know that my colleagues in the theatre were going to feel comfortable with the exhibition as well. Because we needed to turn it on every day and make sure it worked, and we managed that for the following month after the first week that we had Genetic Moo with us, and it ran every day, and it was great, and people came and we successfully managed it going forward. And I think it showed our community, but also the broader people within the arts in Wales. It did attract people from the Arts Council and other institutions that host exhibitions. That showed them some of the possibilities of what we could do with digital here in Wales. And I was very delighted to be part of that. And I think again, other things are going to come up through the panel discussion if we move forward with that. And perhaps I hope that gives enough of an overview if we go to the discussion.
Thanks very much, Punch. That's really great. And such different experiences that you and Heidi had. And of course, Nicola, in the panel discussion, you can also throw in some examples of some of the bigger institutions you've worked with too. These two are both smaller galleries, which is each of them extremely different, so showing different ways of working. But it would be good if in some of the discussion you threw in a few examples from some of the bigger institutions like museums and how they look at it. So both Heidi and Punch made the point that these were quite different. I mean, Heidi went out to look for it. Punch sort of had it suggested in a kindly way, but a forceful way. What's the legacy of going down this route? Punch, you mentioned there were no hooks, so it was quite different. What's the legacy of doing something like this as you go forward as a gallerist, and Heidi the same. Is there something that you actually add to the gallery experience going forward, having been involved in a micro world? Heidi, maybe you could take that first.
Mute.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I think I saw my first digital piece that was actually interactive probably at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, maybe as many as 10 years ago. And I remember being really fascinated that something I did, some movement that I made could impact the art on the wall. And so I think ever since that time, I've been looking for an opportunity to curate a project like this. And so it was really exciting to see that come to fruition. And I think, like, so for me, that's sort of where the starting point was in my personal experience. And I think for all the people that came to the gallery, you know, this could have been a similar moment for them, which will lead to some future exploration. In terms of where it will take our gallery in the future, I think that it will help me to make the case that there's value in showcasing this kind of artwork because it was so well received. We had a wide variety of audience that came, and yeah, it just connected to people in ways that maybe they didn't expect.
Thank you, thank you.
If I could maybe
yeah.
just interject, it's very exciting to hear what you say, Heidi, because one of our ambitions is to share the excitement of digital art. And of course, Carla, as you know, in charge of the Lumen Prize, you feel the same. And it's very powerful when we know that actually has had that impact. So it's really good to hear.
It is great to hear. Punch, did you have a feeling that it had an impact on the community, that there was any legacy from the show?
Yes, I mean, I think, you know, in rural areas, things often move slowly, but nevertheless, certainly the people from the Arts Council, it showed them opportunities, and I know that they are supporting digital going forward. In fact, I heard yesterday from a colleague who I used to work with at the theatre, who's since moved to Newport, in the theatre complex there, the Arts Council have just awarded them £40,000 for a digital project to encourage the community to look at how they can use digital going forward in terms of what they're doing. So you know, whether it's directly connected, I'm not sure, but I'd like to think so. And similarly, there was a project here, somebody who does a philanthropist that supported us just with a little bit of the workshops. There's a group of young people, and again, tangentially, they've gone off and done a project which is due to be incorporated in the museum and gallery, which is actually over the road from the gallery I have here. You know, for many reasons, that project in itself has been delayed, but it was open before COVID-19, and we trust it'll open again in the next 6 months. And you know, there are certainly aspirations that that group of young people are going to do something with the project that they were working on at the time. So I hope so. And for me, I've got more confidence in my own gallery to know that, yeah, I don't need to be frightened of those screens.
That's great. Well, I mean, we like planting seeds, don't we, Nicola? And seeing the seeds grow up. So let's talk a little bit about the installation procedure. Punch, you're a good person by saying that you're a bit frightened of even dealing with the remote on your TV. And that I remember when the show came and how you plunged right in and you learned about coding and taught yourself how to take it. I was very impressed. And also, Heidi, it would be interesting to know how you dealt with something where the artist and the exhibition manager, in this case Lumen, weren't actually with you. I'd be interested in both you talking a little bit about the exhibition experience, the installing of this kind of exhibition. Heidi, do you want to go first with that?
Yeah. I learned a lot through this process. I think I, like Punch, was a little bit apprehensive, like, is this going to be possible? my initial conversations about this project were actually with Jack Addis, the director at Lumen. And he's just really helpful and really broke down lots of nuts and bolts of how we could make this happen. And I think that even me asking, could we do this without the artist coming, was like a new thing for them as well. So we were kind of sorting through this together. One of the things that was really helpful in the actual process was an idea that came from Jack in those early conversations, which was trying to conceive of the planning and installation in multiple interconnected phases. And so, for example, we first worked out the physical placement and where the projectors were going to go. Where were they going to go so we'd get the right throw ratio to the wall and they would fill the right amount of space. And then once we figured out where we wanted them, we had to figure out how to physically install them. And luckily, I had a couple of really great colleagues who helped kind of retrofit a couple light fixtures to create mounts to hold the projectors from the ceiling. And so we were able to get them right where we wanted, but it took, you know, one of the things I was grateful for was that we had enough time to sort all of that out. So I was kind of giving myself ample time, thinking it might take longer than I think it would. So once we kind of problem solved the physical placement of the projectors and the computers and the machinery, then we were able to kind of lay in the artwork itself and start to do some of the more micro tuning of fine-tuning of how the different pieces would interact with each other and visitors. And that's where we started to have more like video calls with Nicola and Tim, and they would look at it and they'd say, oh, that's not supposed to look like that. And then they would send over a different set of code. And I didn't personally deal with a lot of the software and the hardware and the programming. I had a guy named Chris who's really into audio visual technical stuff, and it was like his language. He's like, oh, I got this. I actually love this. So he was really excited. It was a step outside the work that he normally does, which is more like lighting for stage performances. So it was really exciting to be able to introduce him to this field as well. So throughout the whole process, Jack and Nicola and Tim were really helpful and were even proactive in like making sure that we had everything we needed and kind of asking questions that maybe we hadn't thought of. So it ended up being pretty seamless, actually.
And it was a very exciting experience for us, because it was the first time we had done something remotely, and we learned a lot, and we realized, I think quite early on, oh, okay, this is actually going to be really important for us, because this could actually plot the way to doing more remote shows, and that was a very significant moment. So we're very impressed. And when I look at the slides of how you lined up the projection, so it's perfect. I mean, you did a brilliant job.
So Punch, how about your experience on installing?
We obviously had a lot more hand-holding, but, you know, nevertheless, you know, Tim and Nicola had to absolutely arrive and hit the ground running with only a couple of days to go into a space that we could do a little bit with in terms of where we were going to hang our projectors and things like that. But nevertheless, we had to work with what we got, and they were able to do that. But once they had gone, what I think was so great, and I all congratulations to them, and you know, anyone in the future wanting to work with us, is their instructions were not in that code that I wouldn't have understood. It was in the, this is how you ride a bike, you know, turn it on here, it's the green button, you know, and it was absolutely fail safe in that respect. And a couple of times when it did go into a loop, you know, again, Nicola, you both knew your equipment and what it should be doing inside out, and knew how to explain within minutes of the start of a day. We could put it right, and you know, I was always very impressed and very grateful to that. And I guess it also taught me to just pause a minute and to go back a step, and you know, on the whole, by the end, we could work it out ourselves what had happened if something went a little bit wrong. So, and when I say wrong, it was always in the turning it on in the morning. It wasn't during the day. So, yeah.
I guess I'd like to ask the panel, is there anything about this that's easier than a traditional show? I mean, is there something that makes it, I mean, you don't have to answer yes, but when you compare it to the ones where you actually bang something into the wall and hang up pictures, I mean, is there I'm looking for another comparison, I suppose, to running what you do normally. I mean, the kinds of show normally. And also for you, Heidi, it'd be interesting to know, did the university's science and technology department, professors and students engage? Mm-hmm. And do you think now they might come back? In other words, did it open up the door to visual arts a little bit as a door opener, perhaps, like to new audiences that maybe you wouldn't have had otherwise?
Yeah. So in answer to the first question, is anything easier? The thing that comes to mind is just the dynamic visual quality of the Microworld itself sparks this amazing curiosity in people, right? So they see this through the glass door and they walk in, which is surprisingly hard to get people to do. It would seem kind of obvious, but it's not. Like, so it really invites viewers from a distance, and that was really powerful. People would see it and that their first question is, what is this? I want to know more. And that's what, you know, that's great for me, because that brings them into the gallery, and I think it will lead to them return visiting again. I was able to collaborate with the College of Science and Technology. They actually financially supported the show in part. They host an annual event called the Science Olympiad, and it brings middle schoolers and high schoolers from around the state to the university, and it fell near the end of the exhibition. So those grade school, middle school, high school students were able to attend. So we made sure that we kind of overlapped those dates. We also hosted a family day, because it was really important to me to kind of allow families to know it's okay to bring their kids to an art gallery. And this was kind of the perfect show to serve as a entryway to that. And as part of that, we collaborated with a local museum called the Science Factory, which is a hands-on kind of science exploratorium. Like, they have all kinds of hands-on projects for kids to engage with at their facility. And so that was yet another way to kind of connect with these sciences in the community. And that event brought in about 160 guests over the span of a 3-hour Saturday event. And those were people that had never been to the gallery before, people with small children, people from the community that probably will come back to the gallery again.
That's great. I mean, that's an amazing development for the arts in general. No matter what kind of art you make, that's a fabulous result. Punch, did you get a similar feel that you'd ignited a few other interested parties to art that hadn't otherwise?
Yeah. Definitely, and ours actually, and again, it was sort of, well, ours started over the summer half-term break, and over that period there was another sort of community show that was being rehearsed and then was on at the end of the week, and it meant again that there were a lot of families with children in the building. It was also a sellout show, and it meant that they spilled out into the gallery in a way that normally they'd just go charging down the stairs to get an ice cream in the interval and not even turn the corner. But because our interactive piece was where they came out of the auditorium, and one of the children would see somebody doing a wiggle and the thing on the wall was changing, they were like, what's that? And it just moved the people into the gallery in a way I've never seen it happen before. But also I think what I realized over the lifetime of the exhibitions, that people did come back, not least because the children had told their friends, you know, and some of them might have only seen the spinning part, and then on the first time they came and hadn't realized about the canal bit with the creatures wiggling across it, or the one on the big wall, and they told their friends, and they'd come back, and because it always changed, and there would be bits, unless they'd not stayed, you know, for long enough the first time, they wouldn't have seen it all, and they sort of got to realize that they hadn't necessarily seen it all when they came back. Whereas our more traditional exhibitions, people think, oh, well, I've, you know, there's 20 pictures, I've seen those, I don't need to go back. Whereas, you know, it felt with the Microworld there was always something, and depending on when you arrived in the gallery, it would be at a different point in the movement, particularly of the feed from the canal, and you'd need to wait for the centipede to arrive. And, you know, so it made people stay and want to stay to see that progression of movement. And I think that was very good. And at the end of the day, it is the young children, younger people, that we're trying to encourage into spaces, into art spaces going forward. And so, you know, it's a bit of a lesson for me as a curator, is that you've got to have something that's good, because they have a much shorter attention span than in the past, perhaps. So you have to capture them early on and encourage them to know that they can get more out of it if they just stay a little bit longer, or come back even. So.
Those are great results.
Yeah.
Thank you to both of you. Nicola, maybe this would be an opportunity for you to talk about comparing these experiences, these two experiences, to some of the bigger shows you've done. I'm thinking about the big installation you did for the National Children's Museum in Halifax, or the big shows you've done in other places. I know you've had up, I think, 70,000 visitors over, I think the first Eureka show had over 70,000 visitors over, what was it, a 4 or 5 month period. So I was wondering if you could talk about the differences in terms of working in the bigger spaces.
Obviously, it's really exciting to do very big venues, and if you know that you can have a show on for several months, you know, that can be remarkable, because we learn so much from doing that. But I would say that it's really exciting to work with smaller galleries, because there's, I think there's a different, the curiosity is a genuine curiosity, and there's room to experiment and to learn together. So it offers an opportunity to take risks, maybe, to develop something, or to switch something. The fact that we were comfortable